Hi, and welcome to Filmmakers Compass Podcast, a show where we watch movies and, well, more movies. So I'm D-Man, joined by CP. But CP, here's the thing about this week's episode. We're going to do something a little bit different. So in terms of what we're going to talk about as our main topic. So I think our our catchphrase there kind of applies this week, but maybe not so much. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Well, I'm excited because I think we're going to have a pretty spirited conversation, but it isn't about a movie specifically. So it's a little bit, we're switching it up. But I've said this many times, it's our podcast, so we're going to talk about what interests us. And this caught my interest. So I'm excited to get into that. But like on all of our episodes, I do want to start off at the top with some shout outs. So first up goes to Jasmine Nunez, who quoted you, CP, that said, and she just said, "I have a hair, LOL." So that's from 2 weeks ago on the Rings of Power finale episode. So thank you. I'm pretty sure I laughed pretty hard in episode at that, and I'm laughing again now. So next up is Giraffes65, who is actually Ivor. So thank you for the comments. He actually said, "Have you heard the theory that Jar Jar was supposed to be a Sith, but the character got no love, so Lucas changed his mind?" And to that, I do say I have heard that theory, or at least I've heard the theory that Jar Jar was the, kind of puppeteer, the Palpatine, in the shadows, and that, Jar Jar was the one who orchestrated the fall of the Republic. And to that theory, I don't know. What are your thoughts, CP?
I actually love that theory. There's that video that goes through and details every instance of Jar Jar, like proof that he's a Sith Lord. And my favorite is the first thing when he does, like, he jumps super high and does that flip into the water on Naboo, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's clearly Force jump."
When they're going to Gunga City.
Yeah.
So he goes, he goes, "I agree about the character flip. Jar Jar may have gone down as one of the best characters in my opinion." So it's actually funny because obviously Jar Jar's legacy precedes him, and he went down as one of the worst, if not the worst, Star Wars character in canon. And it is interesting though how if you were to just totally flip that character, he could have had one of the most amazing arcs. Like imagine seeing Phantom Menace and you see Jar Jar, he's like, getting his face stuck between lasers, and he's grabbing things with his tongue, only to end up the person that destroys the galaxy. That'd be quite a twist.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but hasn't
You're
Lucas
wrong.
hasn't Lucas gone on record saying that Jar Jar is in fact his favorite character?
Yeah, I guess Lucas has said a few things about Jar Jar, and I think he defends him vigorously because I think he was proud of the character that was created. Although he does clearly phase him out over the entire prequel trilogy, and of course, I know he was created in the '90s, but there is no mention of him, even with Lucas's constant additions to the original trilogy. So he never pops up there, but Hayden Christensen pops up there. So he could have, but he didn't do it. So, as to whether it's truly his favorite character, I know he may just be defending him, but I know he also said that he wrote Jar Jar for a younger audience, and that he did find that the younger audience was really receptive to the character. It was a bunch of original trilogy adults who just hated him. So, kind of funny. Next up on our shoutouts is Prospective. Says, "I still believe the original big bad for the prequels was supposed to be Jar Jar, Darth Jar Jar." So, I mean, I guess the people love it. But the production team was scared off by the backlash of the first film, so they shoehorned Dooku in as the substitute villain. I cannot verify that. I do not know if that is true. But if it is, it would be quite a fascinating writer's room debate right there.
Well, especially since Dooku is such a weak Sith Lord, like, in character. So it's interesting. That's for sure.
Well, we brought this up as our inspiration last week, and I still haven't gotten around to seeing all the episodes, but there is actually an episode in the new Tales of the Jedi that really gives Dooku kind of the correct character arc to make him work within the context that he was, you know, brought into the prequels. Because there's a quick mention that like Qui-Gon was his Padawan.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that he became disillusioned, but that's about the extent of his character background. We really don't get a lot about him. And we just know that, I guess he's an old Sith that came about after Darth Maul died. Because,
Hmm.
Siths there can only be two. That's what they
Hmm.
said. So I don't know, hard to say. Last up for shoutouts is the real James Holden. He said, hot take, what do you think is the best of the three prequel Star Wars films? So I actually answered this on social media. So if you guys are tweeting at me, if you're leaving comments, if you tag me, I do respond. Absolutely, 100%. So thank you for everybody that tagged me this week. I love Star Wars, and I think I wrote like a massive block of text. But yeah, my favorite is Revenge of the Sith. So I know, CP, I think I know what yours is.
And what's mine?
I would guess it's the Phantom Menace.
Nah, it's actually Revenge of the Sith too.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, mine goes Revenge of the Sith, Phantom Menace, Attack of the
Yep.
Clones. I don't know anybody who's actually said Attack of the Clones was their favorite. It has a couple things in it that I kind of liked. For some reason, I really liked the scene when he goes to Dax's diner. I don't know
Mm.
why. It made Coruscant feel like real. I don't know. That was the one thing I really liked about Attack of the Clones is like they end up going to that bar and he's like, "You don't want to buy death sticks, or you don't want to
Hmm.
sell death sticks." I think, and they like go to a bar. They're kind of running on the streets. He goes to Dax's diner. There's the library. That was the one thing I liked about it because in the other two movies, Coruscant is this big, intimidating city, but for the most part,
They don't
you know,
actually interact in it.
not in the actual city itself. They're
Yeah.
doing political things or they're in Palpatine's, quarters or whatever. And they just never go to like street level. And so that I kind of liked in Attack of the Clones. That was cool.
Hmm.
And the Django fight scene with Obi-Wan was pretty dope too.
Yeah,
And
it's pretty cool.
the Ash. No, I'm just kidding. It was actually pretty sweet. I love that movie. Well, that does it for my shout outs. Did you have any on this episode, CP?
I have none.
All right. Well, then it's time to get into our topic. So I hope all of our listeners are ready because here we go. This week, Netflix officially added to their pricing tier an ad based option, which is wild when you consider that that the CEO has said many times that Netflix will never have ads, but apparently it has come to this. They are showing ads. And I don't know, I want to throw it over to you for your first impressions. I mean, what do you think about Netflix adding ads? It's jarring to say the least.
Well, oh, so much. I mean, first things first. Wasn't the whole reason why we loved Netflix in the beginning was because we got away from those pesky ads to begin with?
Yeah, I think it was kind of like part of the promise of cord cutting or streaming was that there was a new way you could do things. So in my opinion, those things are all the content is on demand, meaning you can pick what you want to watch when you want to watch it. Awesome. And
Mm-hmm.
that actually hasn't gone away. That is, in a nutshell, what streaming is versus what cable and TV was back in the day, which was you had to watch what was on when you're there. And if you wanted to watch something specific, you had to plan for that time slot and either record it or you had to be there. If your show premiere or, drops at 8 p.m. and you want to watch the newest episode of Friends, you got to watch it at 8 p.m. on that day.
Yeah.
So the second thing is no ads. It presented a way for you to pay for a service and get content without ads. Now, the reason I bring this up is because it's kind of the way the internet is operated in general, but there's always been this assumption that things that are ad supported are typically free on the internet, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to be served ads, things tend to be free. So, perfect example is YouTube, where it's like, yes, we all have YouTube. We can all access YouTube, watch whatever we want, but there are ads. It's a trade off. And they also went ahead and included that great little skip button.
Yeah. And I mean, and I think that goes back to Web 1.0 kind of, right? Where all these websites were popping up and the advertisers are what was, keeping the lights on in the early days of the internet. And it's just sort of evolved. And I think we've come to expect that we either pay for content directly or the advertisers pay for content.
Exactly. So finally, the last thing was that by simply instituting all this new technology that streaming and our devices have brought about, was that you could actually release content in new and unique ways. So a perfect example is Netflix totally abandoned the idea that you release a show, one new episode per week until they're all released. Netflix went ahead and said, we're going to drop the whole damn season and it's streaming. So you pick what you want to watch when you want to watch it. And you can watch the whole thing. You can watch it one episode a night, one episode a week, whatever suits you, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
the technology of something like YouTube opens up opportunities to connect with creators that television and, even to this day, things that are put in theaters and on TV, sure, we can follow celebrities and actors and directors and everybody, but the interaction you get between the platform on something like YouTube is incredible. So that technology opens up new ways to do things. And I don't know, it's so weird to me that Netflix has ads. And I actually went to their website and verified this. The tier is live as of this week.
Okay.
So I did not, however, make a new account and purchase the ad account to test it out. So sorry to our listeners, but if that's you, I already have an account, so with no ads. So I was like, what's the point? I know how it's going to work. But it's weird though, because essentially the ad supported tier, it's basically like, this is what I used to pay for at this price with no ads, and now there's just ads. And it really upsets me.
Well, I think it does because it feels like everything that we loved about Netflix is now really kind of up in smokes. And I even, come back to the point of I'm like, is it even worth keeping a Netflix subscription these days?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So there's a few things that kind of go into that, which is other streaming services have actually gone backwards to the model of releasing new content weekly. So for their series, and almost every other streaming service besides Netflix does this. I'm assuming Netflix will. They've already inched toward it with releases like Ozark, the final season, and Stranger Things season 4, where for whatever reason they said they weren't done yet, but they could not release the final kind of 2 episodes or part 2 of the season. So they've already started to stagger a little bit. But the other thing too is, with Netflix, you you have to accept the fact that they don't have the best content anymore, right? Like there's so many competitor streaming services that, in my opinion, a lot of the content that I used to watch on Netflix is somewhere else, and I have that streaming service now too.
Well, and I think, I mean, it's really funny, right? Because in this last year, Netflix has come out with all the reasons as to why there's a drop off in subscribers. And I think what you're hitting at is one of the biggest ones. And it's actually one of the things that they've kind of dismissed on their own, right? Like, obviously, inflation is on the rise. It comes on the heel of everyone went out of their way during the pandemic to purchase maximize their streaming capacity when they were sitting at home and had nothing to do but watch content. Now they're forced with the decision of which ones do we actually want to keep. Netflix was born in an era where they were the original streaming service.
Yeah.
Since then, we have tons and tons of other streaming options available. So does it even warrant you really investing in Netflix anymore? Aside from that, the original Netflix business model was really this growth model of let's get everyone on the planet, with Netflix as the first mover. Let's get everyone to subscribe to Netflix. And at some point, that's going to top out. You are going to reach market saturation. And it's just not really practical to think that you can sustain that sort of growth indefinitely.
Yeah, and one of the things, this also I think kind of bugged you a little bit when I was talking to you in pre-production, but one of the things Netflix did to spur that growth was, I'm not going to say they ever said outright or had an advertising campaign that really encouraged it, but they certainly didn't discourage it. And I'm pretty sure they were fine with it, which is password sharing,
Well,
or account sharing.
so on that note, I actually did a little bit of digging, and I wanted to tell you one of the things that I found. So Netflix never outright said, hey, share your passwords. But on March 10th, 2017, 5 years ago, on Twitter, Netflix said, when they were promoting their new series, Love, they tweeted, Love is sharing a password.
Interesting. So
I
they
would
were,
say that they were pretty much encouraging us to share our passwords at that time.
Which I get it. When you're back in the day, you're the premier streaming service, you're trying to grow. Why not be like, hey, share your account and get as many people or as many devices connected to Netflix as possible. So people are just right, they're watching, they like the product, and the idea is hopefully eventually, when they get a new device and they forgot the old password, or they move or whatever, they'll get an account themselves, which I don't know what percentage of those people ended up being converts, but the point is that people were watching Netflix, which is more important, I think. So, and it worked. I mean, Netflix did end up on almost every device. Like, I think they have something like 200 million subscribers, or a lot, like a lot.
Yeah, I know it still has. They still
how
have
many
the largest
Americans
subscriber
are there?
base. Yeah,
there's like 332 million Americans. I don't know why I picked that number, but I hope it's accurate. But yeah, I mean, like,
in an
Netflix
article
has a couple hundred. Yeah,
I saw, let me flip back to it. I saw that they had about 220 million subscribers. Still the largest amount, hands down.
Yeah, it's not even close. I mean, they've been around the longest, and they've done their best. But yeah, so what I guess the context for this whole conversation is that last quarter Netflix was losing subscribers for the first time in like a decade, and they had to figure out ways to combat that, because apparently, and this is just my opinion, but apparently their business model is simply subscriber growth and then investment to invest in that subscriber growth. Like, does Netflix even actually have like a viable business plan? Like, let's just say they couldn't get one more subscriber. Can they turn a profit?
I don't know, because the weird thing about Netflix is, I mean, and I think we've talked about this. It seems like they always they are fundamentally a technology company and not a content company, and that has never been so clear as the last 2 years, when the absence of content on Netflix coincides with a drop in subscriber base. And you were talking about this sooner, earlier in the a couple of minutes ago. The problem is this: when Netflix was a content warehouse, right? When it was the virtual blockbuster that you could go into and watch anything and everything that had ever been made, for the most part, yeah, Netflix was fantastic. But as soon as all these other companies came around and said, you know what, we're going to want our own little piece of this pie, and we are going to take our library and lock it up, and if you want it, you have to come to us and get it. Netflix really, yeah, of course people started leaving, because Netflix never had the legacy original content that Warner Brothers and Disney did, and all the other studios.
And the thing too is that I think at the end of the day, I think Netflix, their technology, their platform is amazing. I mean, it's incredible the boundaries they've pushed over, the last decade or so. But at the end of the day, whoever owns the IP wins. You look at these other streaming services, right? You look at Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime is backed by Amazon. Like, Prime Video doesn't have to like turn a profit. That's like a bonus thing they do, for Prime customers. You look at Apple TV Plus and all the content they're putting out. I mean, Apple is not a content producer in the sense that they're like a studio. They just went out and hired the best people.
Yeah.
They didn't nurture talent in house. They just basically were like, here's a bunch of money, now go make some awesome shit. And they don't need it to turn a profit because Apple is like, that is an ancillary service that we offer to all the people who are our customers, right?
Yeah.
And then lastly, you have Disney, who is, a multinational conglomerate, but in essence, everything that's on Disney Plus, they basically own it. They don't pay any royalties or licensing fees for any of the content on Disney Plus. That's all Disney content. So the only cost associated with Disney Plus is just running the actual streaming service. And when you look at Disney as a conglomerate, I think, their film studio is like third or fourth in what makes them money. It's like, I think it's like theme parks, hotels
Ships.
and resorts,
Yeah.
cruise
Yeah.
ships, merchandise, and then movies and all that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's freaking crazy. Now I have to give Disney credit. They got Disney Plus they got it out just in time for the pandemic.
Oh,
So obviously no one knew that was coming, but point is they got it out just in time by a stroke of luck. And, they were able to pick up a bunch of subscribers during that time. But Netflix has this problem where they have to pay those, to compete with the likes of Apple and Amazon, and they have to pay a crap load of money to produce their own content, while they also don't have any like legacy content that things like you said, Warner Brothers, Paramount, Peacock, Disney, they all have all this legacy content, whether it's sitcoms or Star Wars or Disney animated features, whatever it is. They just have that. And Netflix just doesn't. So I don't know. Like, I can only speak for myself, but I used to open Netflix every day. Like, I used to watch Netflix all the time. They used to have Parks and Recreation and The Office and Friends and Marvel movies and Marvel shows and like all this stuff that's all gone now. It's all left for other streaming services. So I can only speak for myself, but like, I don't open Netflix every day anymore. I only open it every once in a while. And, to that end, how long is it until I don't really open it and decide I don't really need it?
Well, and I think the problem is, right? I mean, really, the moment that Netflix, in my mind, brought this upon themselves was the moment they moved from the content distribution business to the content creation business. They got a little too greedy and they thought, you know what? We have this money. We could make more money. We could pull in more subscribers if we give them content that is exclusive to Netflix, which from a business standpoint, yeah, it's pretty smart, except for the fact that, you kind of awoke the sleeping giants that were Disney, Universal, Warner Brothers, who are sitting there saying, wait a second. So now you are directly competing with us on the point of creating content, and you are still making money off of our content that we're renting to you to use on your platform. Like, screw that. And that's when all of a sudden we started seeing all these major studios pulling their legacy content from Netflix. And it was kind of downhill from there.
Yeah, I mean, and Netflix, to their credit, a lot of their originals have done well. House of Cards, Orange is the New Black, Stranger Things. There's a lot of movies that have come out. Marriage Story. Squid Game was a show that was, I think maybe their most watched show ever. It's pretty crazy that Netflix has had a cultural impact. I think Tiger King. Making a Murderer. There's like all these things, that they've done well in the content business. It's to me, it's more at what point do people rewatch those? Because that's when I say legacy content, I'm talking about content that people are like, oh, I want to watch a movie. Like, let's go find something that we've probably all seen,
like Star Wars.
I want to watch Star Wars. Yeah. So, what do they have there that people are like, yeah, let's rewatch it? Like I rewatch Stranger Things, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and I know they have a couple holiday movies and some things like that, but I'd say my rewatching numbers probably almost exclusively go to sitcoms. Like I watch a lot of sitcoms.
Yeah, I know.
I just like to laugh, you know. But I don't know. Netflix never invested in that, you know, that kind of vertical of content. And I don't know. The idea that now they're like basically a lot of the things that made Netflix Netflix, meaning like, hey, we want to revolutionize how you consume media, but we're going to start showing ads. We're probably going to start staggering content releases. We don't really allow password sharing anymore.
Well,
You know,
as of 2023, they are not going to allow it anymore.
yeah, like it's weird because first of all, it feels a lot more like TV than I think it is revolutionary. It's just, you know, obviously it's content on demand, which is
Mhm.
great, but it feels a lot more like TV these days than the future. You know, you're like, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. But yeah, it's just weird because it seems like a lot of what they're doing is just trying to counter,
The
you know, a
subscriber
fall
loss.
off. Yeah, a fall off in subscribers. But I don't know. At a certain point, like these solutions will exhaust themselves. So like it just makes me wonder, like, you know, can Netflix really do this forever? Like eventually you'll only get so many people that are gonna go to the ad tier. So you're like, what do you do if you can't make money? Because they sound desperate.
Well, the thing I hate about the ad tier on Netflix is like, oh my God. And like, I hate ads. I will be very clear, right? I
Ooh,
get,
can we just clarify though? I love ads. Like I work in marketing and advertising, and ads, I love to see what works, what doesn't.
I
It's
hate
interesting to
ads
me.
and I hate people that make ads. So, like, at least on YouTube, right? You acknowledge you're like, I'm not paying for this. So I will sit here and 80% of the ads on YouTube you can skip after 4 seconds. So you get really, really angry, but then it's done. You hit the skip button, you get to the video you want to see. Now, the thing that sucks about Netflix is it actually doesn't allow you to do the one redeeming quality about television ads, which is on television, you can either DVR past them or you can just outright flip the channel back to ESPN and watch Sports Center for 2 minutes and then come back and you're back to your show. On
Yeah.
Netflix, you're actually going to have to watch the ad. Like, what's more annoying than that, dude?
Yeah, I have to agree with you. And I don't know if you heard this, but the ad platform that they're running, first of all, they're not splitting any of the ad revenue with creators that produce their original content, apparently. Just FYI, that's kind of crazy.
Okay, so it's much more a traditional television model.
Yeah, they keep all the ad revenue. Second of all, they are introducing mid roll ads. So be it shows, be it movies, they will be interrupted with ads. And Netflix said that they're being thoughtful about where they're placing those. But to that end, especially for content that's already been created on Netflix, I mean, you think about, you know, a writer's room for a sitcom, right? You know that at like a certain time limit, you kind of build in a break for a commercial break.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of this content was not created with any ads running in the middle of it at all.
Yeah.
So like it's not I guess you know it reminds me of like George Lucas and not wanting people to like mess with his vision. You know, he always gets so upset that like you know the producers at the studio he's like they cut 5 minutes and he gets all pissed off. But the point is that a lot of these people made this content with the intention of there never being any ads in it. And from a creative standpoint, I could see why that would be upsetting because you're like, well, you know, I think it's you're taking away from the tension of the movie or whatever, you know. And I get it. Movies that never had commercials in the middle of them have run on TV forever, and it's fine. But still, I mean, I think, you know, people were paid a lot of money and they had a vision, and it's a little upsetting that that's how it's going to be.
No, I mean, you bring up a good point. Now, the other thing that I think is missing from this equation too, and I saw some numbers that I pulled up. They're from a couple months ago, so they might be off. But I do think it is also worth noting. The other reason why people are leaving Netflix is still the most expensive streaming service available, right?
Yeah. Well, I
When you
mean,
can,
that ad tier will lower it, and make it more accessible to more people, I suppose.
but the point is, I mean, HBO Max ad free was like a $15 plan. Apple Plus was like a $5 plan. Disney Plus is like $8 a month, and Hulu was like 12.
Yeah, and you can bundle those too now.
And I think I don't remember for sure, but I think that ad free Peacock is somewhere like $8 a month. The point is, and then when you consider Prime, which is like what 135 a year, but you also get the advantage of
The benefits of
Prime
all
shipping.
Prime. Yeah.
Yeah, all the stuff that comes with Prime, and I mean, still that's breaking it down to like $13, $12 a month. Like,
Yeah.
you are still paying the most for your Netflix subscription. And over the last 5 years, you are getting less and less and less of what you originally bought Netflix for from it.
Yeah, and the way I look at it is the problem with this model is if you're driving people away, even if the ad tier initially brings more subscribers in, I mean, eventually you're going to run into the problem of, if you're not spending tons of money, either creating an insane amount of new content or absolutely top tier, the best content you can watch, right? You have to spend that money to go get content from other places. The problem is that there's nothing to even bid on anymore. Almost all the content is claimed at this point on other streaming services.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think Netflix, if they're not careful, they run the risk of kind of becoming the bargain bin of streaming services.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a good example.
They can still, spend a lot of money and they can produce seriously top tier content, but consumers are going to have to decide, after, like if we just rip off streaming service names, right? We're like Netflix, Hulu, ESPN Plus, Disney Plus, HBO Max, Peacock, Paramount Plus, Prime, Showtime, whatever,
Yeah.
if you like once you're paying for all those and you just said they're all basically within the range of like $8 to $10, you're basically paying for cable.
Yeah, that's
you
right.
know but I mean, I don't think people like, the thing is, if the ad tier is like $6.99 and the paid tier is like $12.99, so you're basically going to save like $6. I don't know if that's enough.
Well, the other thing too is that, I mean, when you're really thinking about the bargain bin of content, there already are free ad supported streaming services out there, like Pluto TV
Yeah.
and Roku, right?
Yeah.
And when you think about those things, you're like, well, actually, in some ways, they have a decent amount of content, and the trade-off is you do just sit through ads, but otherwise it's free. Why would you pay for an ad tier for some of these services? And I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Like, obviously, Discovery Plus, HBO Max, Peacock, Hulu, all are in agreement with Netflix and believing that there is a ad supported, tier that they offer. But at the end of the day, I just think that we're getting to the point that I don't know why anyone would, you know?
Yeah, it's tough. I think we'll see how it plays out. I mean, maybe, people are fine with the ads. We've all grown up watching commercials and ads basically everywhere. I forget what the percentage or the number of, I think there's like a crazy statistic that says like each person in America every day sees X amount of adverts, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
billboards, bench signs, phone ads, television, whatever it is. We see like a ton of them, which is wild. Um, maybe people are fine with it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe, Netflix, probably has spent a lot of money on focus groups and trying to find out if people would be open to this concept. If we were to knock the price all the way down to here, would you be interested in getting it then? maybe. So we'll see. And we'll see how many people, I'm interested too to see more than that, how many people go down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, downgrade to the ad supported plan.
Yeah, or is there a lot of people that are paying whatever Netflix is now, like $15 a month, that are like, oh, if it's $6.99 or whatever it is, $9.99, maybe you're saving $5 to $7. Is it worth it to go back down? Or would you prefer to keep it? Because I think that says a lot too.
Or are you just going to cancel your Netflix outright? I mean, that's the
Yeah.
other
So
piece of this. Like, is this a futile effort? And I mean, if Netflix actually wants subscribers, do they need to do a better job of making content to bring subscribers back?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, I don't honestly know to what degree they have a profitable business model.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I would like to think, if everybody's paying them $10 a month, that this whole thing could be profitable. But I know they spend like crazy amounts of money. So well, anyway, they would know better than I would. I just, I think to me the idea of still paying for a subscription and seeing ads, even though I think we all do it on some streaming service somewhere, it was always like Netflix was like that gold standard of like they'll never have ads.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was the one. It was like, hey, no matter what, Hulu might have ads, Peacock might have ads, but if you're on Netflix, there's no ads.
Mm-hmm.
And well, those days are gone.
It's gone.
Well, who knows? These streaming services are competing and they're going to want to, return an investment. So, I mean, they may chip away at that model eventually and be like, hey, the ad supported tiers do really well. We're just going to add ads in all of our tiers.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they all start to do that, then why not? Because there's so much money to be made, right? Rather than just staying put. So I don't know. Who knows? Maybe we'll live in an ad dominated streaming world soon.
Dude, might have to go back to cable.
But I'm rooting for Netflix, man. I want to see Netflix, I want to see them be successful. They were the revolutionaries, they were the rebels, they shook it all up. You know, I've had Netflix for I don't even know how many years. They've taken, not taken, but I've paid them a lot of money for that service and I've, loved most of it. So I'm rooting for Netflix. I don't want to see them fail. And, I guess I just, kind of hate to see them so kind of desperate a little bit. It's a little off-putting because they were always the front runner and it seems like they're sliding backwards a little bit. They were innovators. It seemed like they always had some new thing.
Well, and they always
pushing
had
pushing the boundaries forward, and that was why people kept going to Netflix. And obviously they benefited from being kind of first. Mm-hmm. So they picked up a lot of ground that way. But I mean, it just always felt like they were pushing forward, and now it feels like they're going backwards.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
So, all right, I'm going to throw it to our listeners. Hey, what do you guys think? Would you be open to an ad-supported Netflix tier? Do you have, any ad-supported streaming services now? And does it upset you, or are you totally fine with it and you don't even care? Let me ask you, CP, because I can answer this. Do you have any ad-supported streaming services that you pay for, not YouTube?
Well, so I have I guess the answer is no. All the platforms that I pay for, Hulu, HBO, Paramount, Netflix, those are all ad-free tiers. The only one I have that is the ad-based tier is I have the most basic version of Peacock, which when they launched Peacock, right, there's like the ad-supported model, the hybrid model, and then the totally ad-free one. And initially in that first year, there was a lot of content you could get on Peacock with the ads.
For free, though.
Yeah. And over the last year and a half, they've moved it away, and it's pretty much totally a worthless streaming service that I don't even bother watching anymore because it's a couple of obscure films, and that's really it. Everything else is locked behind the paywall, and they want you to move up to a higher plan.
Yeah, I remember when they launched, I think it was shows, but at the free level, you could at least get it was seasons of shows. It might
Oh,
be the
you
first two or three of maybe a 7 season long
they had the
show.
entire series of Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, like they had a lot of content that was ad supported, but clearly, for myself, I said I would let you guys know where I stand. I do pay for in the Disney bundle. I get Hulu with ads, and I do watch Hulu. I watch Modern Family and sitcoms on Hulu, and I did check out that show, Welcome to Wrexham. That was a cool show.
Cool.
But mostly sitcoms. I watch Always Sunny. I watch Modern Family, things like that. And then I do pay for the ad supported version of Peacock. So, which has actually been fascinating because this is like a tangent, but I didn't know this. But one of the reasons I decided to pay for it was, did you know that Peacock is the home of WWE?
No, but I did know it is the home for Notre Dame football.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm watching Notre Dame no matter what. But WWE, I haven't like revisited wrestling in a long time, but like I'm really kind of back into it because I got Peacock and it has every like all the legacy content for WWE, or back then it
So
was WWF.
all the Attitude Era stuff that you used to watch as a kid is on there.
All the 80s. Oh, you can go all the way back. They might even have 70s stuff. You can watch the first episode of Raw. You can watch the newest episode of Raw. Like,
That's
it's wild.
cool.
So, I mean, I've kind of gone back and I'm like actually watching like
Does
the
Julian
Attitude
come over
Era.
and do you guys watch wrestling together?
No, I'm gonna tell him though, because I think he has it. But like I'm literally watching like, it's this pay-per-view, and then I'll watch like the Raws in between, and then it's like the next pay-per-view. I'm like, oh my God, this is like a great drama.
Wow, that's crazy, dude.
So it's kind of neat. And then all those shows, I watch The Office, Parks and Rec and all that, and then Raw in particular, but like all of those, they have breaks for ads built right in.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel weird, I guess, when I do it. But anyway, I do already do that. So I'm not here to just like, shit on everything. I hope the best for Netflix, and hopefully, maybe we all just got to adjust to some ads in our lives.
It's going to suck, dude.
But on that note, to close this episode out, I actually wanted to do a list this week of our top 3 Netflix originals. So I did mention some of them, House of Cards, Orange is the New Black, Making a Murderer, Squid Game, Tiger King, Stranger Things. There's so many. But we're doing series and movies, just your favorite pieces of content. And if you're cool with it, I'll go first.
Do it.
Number three on my list is it's a holiday movie, but I think it's just so well done. It's an endearing story, and I love the animation. But it's a film called Klaus. So I don't know if you've seen it.
I think it's got like David Spade as like a postman or something.
Yeah, he's a postman that goes up, and he ends up meeting this guy Klaus, and they end up delivering toys to like this town up in the mountain. And I don't know, it's a great story. There's a little bit of humor in it.
And you now watch it every Christmas.
I do watch it every Christmas. Well, I mean, since I started, which I think was last year, so I'll watch it this year. But I actually really like that. I got to give a shout out to my old coworker Israel. He was the one who recommended that to me, and I checked it out. So thank you, man. I found a movie that I really enjoy. Next up on mine, number 2, is going to be The Irishman. Now, I know this movie kind of gets a lot of crap because it's not considered Scorsese's best work, and that is a high bar. So fair enough. It may not be his best work, but even as a Netflix original movie, it's still a Scorsese movie. And I actually really enjoyed The Irishman. It's a bit of a slow burn compared to things like Goodfellas and Wolf of Wall Street, but in a weird way, I think it kind of works. There's a real good theme that runs throughout the movie about, all these gangsters do all of this, stuff that in the moment it feels like your whole world is collapsing, and then at the end you're just an old man sitting in a nursing home, and you're like, does anybody even know about it? So that's a crazy theme. You think about like, I murdered a guy, and like 50 years from now no one cares. Like, no one gives a shit. The only reason the guys even come is just because they wanted to arrest him. They really don't even care. who
Mhm.
did it. They just want to get this guy. So when I say that I mean like the FBI. But anyway, yeah, I love that. I think the movie has a good theme. I thought it was really well acted. There is, I don't know how well it will age, but their de-aging technology would look pretty good for the time. We got a glimpse back into, probably the early 90s, 80s of Robert De Niro. That's cool.
Yep. Yeah.
So, and then number one, I kind of pointed out earlier, is Stranger Things. So that is actually one of the Netflix original series that I've rewatched the most. I think season one for me is an absolute gold standard. 2 and 3 are seasons that I think if you're a fan of the characters, it's fun to hang out with them, and it has a real kind of monster of the week flavor. What are they doing this, through this one? And then season 4 just brings it all home. I mean, they went, full circle. They started completing arcs that were opened in season 1 and answering questions that people have had since the show aired. And now I think I'm so psyched for the conclusion. Like, I can't wait.
All right, that's fair. Okay. I'm going to go with number 3 for me is the series Shadow and Bone. And
I have not seen that one.
You probably won't like it. A friend of mine recommended reading the book series. I did. And then she recommended that I watch the series, and I did. So shout out to Caroline. Thank you for the recommendation. I thought it was good. I thought it was interesting. It's kind of like one of those fantasy series. I don't know if they're going to do any more seasons of it, but the one season was interesting. We'll leave it at that.
Nice.
Number 2 for me, I'm actually going to agree with your number 1 choice, which is Stranger Things, because I mean, they really kind of caught lightning in a bottle with that show. It was a cultural phenomenon, and no matter how many times you rewatch it, it still is really, really well made.
Oh, I mean, the strongest point in the series is the casting and the characters, hands down.
Mm-hmm.
They created some really, really memorable characters who you can get behind and root for. And that is the show's absolute strongest attribute.
They also do something amazing in Stranger Things, which is they embrace the nostalgia without really like falling into the trap of nostalgia. Like, so many other things don't walk the line that they do,
Yeah, I mean, other things, they use it in a kind of shameless manner to just, appeal to that. And here it's like built right into the story.
Yeah.
It's usually not done with like a wink or anything. It's like, no, this is a part of the story, right? Like they introduce in the 3rd season a mall. Well, malls were a big part of that era. And, here they introduce it, but they don't just have the kids go to the mall. It becomes a big part of the story.
Yeah. Yep. And
they build it right in. It's really well done. I love it. That's such a great point.
And the number 1 for me is, which I'm sure you've seen, is actually the series, The Movies That Made Us, because
oh yeah, I love that.
It's series. About all my favorite movies and all the behind the scenes crazy stories that you hear about all these movies from the VHS era, really. And I just think it's a great series. So if you haven't seen it, you should watch it. And if you have watched it, you should watch it again, because it's pretty amazing.
It's actually a really cool series. It's very funny. Whoever's the narrator is actually really good. They do a fairly decent job at getting people for interviews. Yeah. Although they don't always get the top tier,
like the major directors or whoever, but
yeah, they don't always get them, but they do get people who were a part of the production, a part of the writing, that some of the actors, some of that stuff. So they do a really good job, and they do pick some of, it's the movies that made us.
Jurassic Park, RoboCop, the Goonies,
Yeah, and then there is also the kind of companion series, if you're into this, but it's called The Toys That Made Us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also a really great series. It's made almost identical, just about a different topic. But yeah, I totally agree with you. That's a great pick too.
So,
all right.
That's my choices. Again, audience, let us know. What do you love about Netflix? And I mean, if you want to, tell us what series you hate on Netflix. I mean, that's always fun.
Yeah. Go ahead and shoot us a comment. Like I said, we'll definitely respond, and we'll, maybe even make the shout outs at the beginning of the show. But we thank you all for tuning in and listening. Hope you enjoyed the show this week. Be sure to follow the podcast. You can go to filmmakerscompass.com where we have all of our social media and subscription links. You can follow me at Big Kid D-Man, and you can follow CP
at NDCal5. Thanks for checking out the show, and come back next week. And until then, keep watching movies.